Hello, and welcome to episode 70 of the Wine Educate podcast. I'm your host, Joanne Close. Okay, here we are at 70. And if you've been with me for a while, you know that every 10 episodes, I do ask that you share this podcast with someone. So it is back to school time, and not just back to school time. I had a very sporty weekend, and by that I mean my children did. Football has started, oh my gosh, and travel soccer is back. I was in Hammond all day yesterday doing the travel soccer thing. And you might be starting your studies again too. So if you would be so kind, if you are finding this podcast to be useful, please do let your classmates know so they can also nerd out about wine laws with us. All right, so that's what we're doing today. It is the continuation of our Burgundy wine laws series, and today is a big one because we're covering the Côte d'Or and the importance of slope in the vineyard and how it influences quality and therefore the appellations in the region. When it comes to slope, it is not only important here in Burgundy. This can be applied to many other wine regions that are in moderate to cool climates especially, and I'm referring to Germany, in the Moselle, Loire Valley, in Alsace, and many more. But here we're looking specifically at Burgundy. So let's talk about elevation first, because when I talk about top of the slope, middle of the slope, bottom of the slope, you need to know how far that is to put this in perspective. In Burgundy, the vineyard range in the Côte d'Or roughly runs from 200 meters to 400 meters. That's 650 feet to about 1,300 feet. The top of the Côte, when you get to about 450 meters, it's generally too high and too cool to grow grapes. So what am I really talking about? A difference of about 50 meters? To put that in perspective, if you were to be one of these really fit people who likes to take the stairs at work, and you worked on the 17th floor, those 17 flights about the distance of 50 meters. For my more visual folks, it's about the height of the Statue of Liberty, not including the base. It's a decent amount of height, but nothing crazy. I hear winemakers tell me when they're working on vineyards like this that have that sort of different elevation, they will bring their jacket and not need it at all in the mid-slope. And when they go up to the higher elevation, they know they're going to need to pop the jacket on because it's noticeably cooler, okay? So I want you to visualize these distances when I talk about what's happening within them. Now, the sweet spot for the very best vines here in Burgundy, where we find our Grand Cru and Premier Cru, is 250 to 350 meters. That's about 820 feet to 1,150 feet. Again, only at about a 50-meter difference between the vineyards that have the lower classification. There's a couple of factors that are coming into play here, and I'm first going to start with soil. When we talk about soil, we have our topsoil and our bedrock. The topsoil is where all the nutrition is, our nutrients. On a slope, the soil runs from the top of the hill and moves down towards the bottom of the hill. So you have less soil at the top and more soil at the bottom. So therefore, because the soil has the nutrients, the top of the hill is low in nutrients. The bottom of the hill is high in nutrients. When we talk about soil and soil nutrients, that directly correlates to vineyard yield. The more nutrients a vine gets, the more it's going to grow, right? But there's that sweet spot. We don't want the vine to have too many nutrients because then it's going to be all shoots and leaves and too much yield. Way too many grapes. And too many grapes equals a dilution of quality. But at the top of the hill, if there's very few nutrients, the vines are going to struggle and maybe not get the nutrients they actually need. So the middle of the hill is the sweet spot. Just enough nutrients for the vine to ripen properly, not too much for the yield to get too high, and for quality to be diluted. Drainage. Same sort of concept with drainage with the water, right? It rains, the water runs down the hill. The top of the hill may be lacking in water, and the bottom of the hill may have too much water, and the middle of the hill is the sweet spot. I'm getting very Goldilocks vibes as I tell you this. It's very too hot, too cold, just right. But it's true. The middle of the hill. And in areas that are cool and moderate, we can have some danger of frost. But the mid-slope, because the air runs down the slope, the cool air runs down, the mid-slope is at less risk for frost. So again, favorable for growing grapes. And then we have the aspect of the slope. So the aspect of the slope is the direction the slope faces to maximize its sun exposure and its heat. And here, in the northern hemisphere, the vines would face south to maximize their heat, right? And it is the opposite in the southern hemisphere, but Burgundy's in the northern hemisphere. So the slopes here, the favorable slopes, are orientated east to southeast to have this consistent ripening. All right, with that little slope lesson in mind, let's go over the appellations in the Côte d'Or. First of all, we start off with Bourgogne AOC, right? And those could be white and red. And before we go ahead and say, oh, they're the bottom of the pyramid, they're the most generic, there's no chumpy wines happening here in the Côte d'Or. And certainly the prices will reflect that. Prices have gone up quite a lot in the last couple of years for various reasons. And it's hard to find a Bourgogne for under $40 these days. However, this is where your small local bottle shop really shines, and their expertise can help you find these values, because some of these Bourgognes are declassified village wines, or they're grown just next to some of these wonderful vineyards, and so they just don't qualify for being included in a higher classification. Do talk to your bottle shop folks and ask them about these, because chances are they've caught a couple of these gems on the shelf, and they represent fabulous value. And within the Côte d'Or, and this is new, this was introduced in 2017, the Bourgogne Côte d'Or AOC was introduced. And this was created sort of what I was just referring to help people recognize that, hey, this wine is not just sourced from anywhere within the broader Burgundy appellation, but within the Côte d'Or, so can represent some very special wines. And some folks, when this came out, worried that it would cause confusion. And my answer to that is, well, Burgundy, too late. That train has left the station already. You are a confusing place. But that's okay. So I would be on team, hey, this is going to help people clarify that this wine was from the Côte d'Or and could be a potential value. We learned last week that the Côte d'Or is split into two, the Côte de Nuits and the Côte de Beaune. The Côte de Nuits is the northern part, known for its full-bodied, longest-lived Pinots. Nearly all the Grand Crus located here are for red wine. And then the Côte de Beaune also does Pinot Noir, but generally in a lighter, fruitier style, and is most famous for its Chardonnays. And nearly all the white Grand Cru is located here. So here we have Côte de Nuits Village AOC, and these are red and white. These can be for red or white from the villages outside some of the famed villages. Same thing for the Beaune, Côte de Beaune Village. These are only for red, however, and can come from one or several villages across the Côte de Beaune. We also have the Bourgogne Haute Côte de Nuits and Bourgogne Haute Côte de Beaune. These are located further west and at higher altitudes. So remember we talked about these vineyards at the higher altitudes, saying up to about 450 meters. It was really too cold. These range from about 300 to 400 meters. It's about 1,000 to 1,300 square feet. And they are cooler and they have more exposure to the winds. So the wines here are typically lighter in body and lighter in concentration, but they have their own appellations. And perhaps these are the appellations that are going to start to benefit from the world getting a bit warmer, right? Okay, the nitty-gritty. So stay with me here because these are the key villages and Grand Crus in the Côte de Nuits and the Côte de Beaune that you need to know for the level 3 level. Starting with Côte de Nuits, we have Gevrey-Chambertin, and the Grand Crus there, we have Chambertin and Chambertin Clos de Bézet. We have Vougeot, and within that, Clos de Vougeot. Then we have Vosne-Romanée. The Grand Cru are Romanée Conti, La Tâche, and La Romanée. And if your wine spidey senses are tingling now that you think, I've heard of these before, yes, you have. So this is where DRC, Domaine Romanée Conti, is super duper famous vineyard. I'd say fabled. I think maybe I had one once. I don't know. Maybe I blacked out with joy. I can't quite remember. They're expensive. They're super culty. Go for thousands of dollars a bottle. They don't reveal where the vineyard sites are because they've had overzealous fans come and take grapes, take clippings, and that's not great. Keep this DRC vineyard in mind, and in particular the winemaker, Albert de Villan, because I'm going to speak about him a little bit more when we talk about the Chardonnay and Maconnais next time. Okay, moving on to, last but not least, in the Côte de Nuits, the Nuits-Saint-Georges. And this is a very notable village, but it does not have any Grand Cru. In the Côte de Beaune, we have Aloxe-Corton. In the Grand Crus, we have Corton, which is just for red. Corton Charlemagne, which is for white. Beaune is an important village, but it doesn't have any Grand Cru. Pommard and Volnay also do not have Grand Cru, but are only for reds. And then we have Meursault. I think out of all of these, Meursault is probably the one you've heard of, maybe the most, and maybe, had some in your lifetime, certainly, because it is slightly larger, and it is famed for its whites. Puligny-Montrachet and Chassagne-Montrachet, and those two share the Grand Cru of Montrachet. That's a story for another day. All of these, except for Pommard and Volnay, produce both red and white. And just to reiterate, the big three for white here are Meursault, Puligny-Montrachet, and Chassagne-Montrachet. Woof, that's a big topic. That's a lot. It's a lot to sink your teeth into, both the minutiae of these classifications and the explanation of how slope plays a big part in the quality of the wines in this region. So I'll let you digest that. Thursday will be our last wine laws lesson on Burgundy, and we're going to talk about Chardonnay and Maconnais, the southern part of the Burgundy region, and some exciting things that are happening there. So I will see you on Thursday.